Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our May Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee meeting. It's great to be here. We are going to get started now with a land acknowledgement. Grimsby is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Haudenosaunee, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Regional Municipality of Niagara and Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Thank you. All right, moving to any disclosures of pecuniary interest tonight. I'm seeing shakes of heads. All right, moving on then to the approval of the agenda. We have a resolution resolved that the May 3rd,
This one before, because you're adding.
oh, because we're adding.
Yes.
Okay, so there's been a change to the agenda, and this is my first time having to do this. So now I understand we have a change to the agenda that we are going to, we're going to make a resolution for first, and then we'll move forward. So we have a delegation here tonight that I would like to delegate. So the new resolution is that the rules of procedure be temporarily suspended by an affirmative vote of 2/3 majority to permit John Reed to delegate and to move item 8.2 to right after the delegation. Do I have a mover? Okay, Brian. I actually don't have a pen. Okay, Brian's going to be my mover. And what about a seconder? Jennifer Kristangi, okay. And then do we have 2/3 majority? Okay, we have all of the majority, so that's great. Okay, so then that is carried. And now, do I approve an agenda? No, because that was the approval. Okay, so now that we have changed our agenda, we are now going to approve the agenda. Thanks everyone for helping me, watching me walk through this. Okay, so now we have our new agenda where we have added a delegation and we've moved item 8.2 to right after the delegation. So now that we have that knowledge, my resolution is that the May 13th, 2025 Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee agenda be approved. A mover. Councillor Kristangi. A seconder. Councillor DeFlavio. All in favor? Great, that's carried. Okay. All right, so now I would like to invite John Reed up to delegate to the committee this evening. Welcome, John. Yeah, so just head over there. I think there's a button you have to press so that it's red, and then you're welcome to speak.
Okay. So, thank you very much for being here. Well, here's my story. Close to 2 years ago, I decided it was time for me to sell my home at 7 Patton Street. I'm in my 70s now, and constantly increasing costs of repairs, property maintenance, bills, and taxes were exacting a toll on a single pensioner's budget. The foundation of my home was in rapid decay, and several other large issues were looming in the near future. So a courteous lady here introduced me to the planner, and I discovered my zoning had changed to multi-residential. We got into a conversation regarding the new Esso gas station at the corner of my street, Patton and Livingston, along with its eyesore corner building that certainly did not fit with the requirements for a permit at that time. She brought out another planner who was also a heritage planner, and I was informed that the earlier project to restrict plans that didn't involve the old-fashioned look had been canceled in this area, including Patton Street. Pleased to hear this, I explained my desire to sell 7 Patton Street to a builder because the cost of preparing my home for sale had become enormous. I was told that now it was possible, and I believe her exact words were, "Yes, you're good to go." As I turned to leave, she asked if I would allow a search in case of a burial site, and I replied, "No problem." Then she asked if I would be willing to incorporate some of my home with the new development, and I naively answered, "Oh, I guess that would be up to the builder." And she said, "Good luck," and I was on my way. Today, I sure wish we had taken that conversation a little deeper. I left there elated, ready to start contacting builders and finding a good fit for Patton Street. My partner, who is in the renovating and construction business, knew a couple well-known experienced builders who she suggested would be great choices. Well, after several months of reaching out, we had our first breakthrough. JEC Properties are building townhomes on Slessor right now, and they were very excited to find another site close by that fitted their plans perfectly. They confirmed their interest, and a week later, an agreement was reached. They said working things out with the finance department should take about 10 days. As fate would have it, JC called around 10 days to say they would need another 70 to 90 days due to the present situation with supply chains, tariffs, cash flow, etc., but insisted they were still very much on board. During this time, these months, we were actively searching the listings, trying to find a place and finally move in together with our new dog, Murphy, after cohabitating for several years. My partner had been preparing to sell her home too now. Then some good news. We had a buyer. She had a buyer, and right after that, Amy and her father, my next door neighbors at Paradise Pools, were at my door expressing their desire to purchase my property. We agreed to an April 11th closing date, which fit into our timing perfectly. Things had magically come together. And within days, all agreements were reached and our lawyers had the paperwork signed and waiting. So instead of receiving a call from the bank on April 11th, Amy phoned saying, "We have a snag. They want to delay the sale due to the intent to demolish the house." Ooh, I'm shaking. That's when I received my first education regarding homes listed on the Heritage Register. I felt terrible because I hadn't a clue. I wasn't even on the municipal register and had no knowledge of their ability to designate my property with a vote and leave them unable to demolish it. I felt so sorry for telling Amy and her father there were no longer any heritage restrictions on the property, as I was told by the planning people last year, not realizing that was a completely different issue from this. My guilt and frustration soon turned to anger, then depression as I searched for answers. I contacted my partner's friend, Craig Lamour, a retired planner, who introduced me to Denise Horn, the Heritage Conservation Manager and Policy Planner. And they talked me down from the ledge a bit. I realize these are laws and rules that are in place, and I will have to go through the process and let people do their jobs. It is not my intention to put the blame on anyone for the scenario that has evolved. But why was I ever informed of the consequences of my naive actions after all the inquiries I made? We wouldn't be in this pickle now. But now I have to introduce the next complication. My partner and I did find a home that ticked all the boxes, and since she was getting the cash from her townhome on May 15th, I thought I was getting mine on the 11th. We bought it. Now I will be helping her and our Pooch Murphy move in this Thursday and then heading back to deal with 7 Patton Street. Not only that, without the money available, my half, we will have to take out a mortgage now. Along with the lawyers, this debacle is getting very expensive, very much so. I'd like to say in 1994, my wife was very excited about transforming this little cottage into her vision. Although we never got involved with the Historical Society in Grimsby, it became her showcase, a labor of love. She was an artist, and I'll talk more about that later. But if the Hawk family is looking down on us today, I don't think they would approve what is happening here. I'm sure they would have appreciated the way we resurrected their home after 120 years, giving it life again, filling it with artists, laughter, great memories. I turned the front room into a music studio where some of the most talented musicians in our band played regularly. Unfortunately, I cannot afford to stay at 7 Patton anymore, and it's no longer in a livable condition. The repairs are way out of my reach monetarily, and the yard work never ends. It's been 31 years now, 24 years on my own there. A crazy chain of events has landed us all in this predicament. Things definitely could have been handled better and more openly. Live and learn. I believe there is no malice here. But if we go backwards, there are 2 people and a beautiful dog that will suffer greatly. Our lives and health are at stake, and I pray we allow Amy and her family the ability to beautify this downtown area and provide some needed services for our community. Sorry. When I was speaking with Denise Horn, the Heritage Conservative manager, she stated, "Too bad you can't hold on till 2027. They will be removing all the properties listed on the municipal register from becoming designated." My home is not designated now, but for God's sakes, why can't we let Amy and her father go through with their plans? They say my house has CV, contextual value, which refers to the idea that something's worth or importance is determined by the specific situation or environment in which it exists, rather than being a fixed or absolute thing. Why not erect a plaque one day on the property to commemorate the early settlers and builders of this home? People will learn and discover more from reading the historical archives and photos and drawings. No one will ever see the inside of this home to learn anything about the workmanship of the era. Finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about someone who was a very accomplished historic figure who used to own the Hawk House, but is not mentioned at all on the history of this property. That would be my wife, who purchased it from the Van Riesens in '95. There was never, ever anyone who honored and paid tribute to the Hawk House more than her. In '94, we looked at several homes along the escarpments and some nice lots near the lake, but she suggested we investigate the cute little place with the wraparound porch that was downtown between those 2 gas stations. I was impressed with the oversized lot, but not the house so much. Way too many red flags for me. But she saw everything through a different lens, from an artist's perspective. She immediately fell in love, envisioned the house as her future showcase. The basement was raw and unfinished, bare walls, open ceiling, perfect place to conduct art classes, which she did 2-3 days a week. I was a house painter at the time, but she asked me to leave the walls as they were, authentic, cracks and bulges, as she planned on resurrecting the entire home, room by room. Make it look like some majestic 18th century masterpiece with her faux finishes, detailed techniques, and drawings using a variety of tools, including cake or elaborate designs. Around the walls at our front entrance near the ceiling, she carefully, in 8-inch, beautifully designed letters, wrote, "Established 1888, the Hawk House. The ornaments of our house are the guests that frequent it." My ex-wife's contribution should not go unnoticed here. She was a visionary, artist, environmental activist, teacher, life-saving paramedic, master chef, Ironman athlete, distributor of biodegradable cleaning and personal health products. Perhaps she deserves a plaque as well. I want to thank you for your time tonight. And I could go on here and list all the damage and the health problems that affect me living there now, but maybe I'll save this for the next meeting, although I do have some major issues with this report, which is a bit frivolous and a lot of
Excuse me, John, it seems like the timer went off, so maybe we could give like one more quick minute if you'd like to wrap up.
One more minute?
Well, we have a time limit. There's a time
And why
limit
is
to
that not
delegation.
for that either?
Sorry?
You have the ability to extend.
Oh, okay. Would we like to extend it then for a couple more minutes?
Oh, I
Okay.
appreciate that.
All right,
It's
so we
really
have-
my entire life savings and my future.
Yes, all right.
Thank you.
So we can give you another 5. Oh, we do have to give another resolution, John, just one second. The reason why these things are timed is so that we can, address what your concerns are and have a conversation and kind of move it
understand.
forward. But thank you so much for sharing so far. And we'll pass a resolution so that you can wrap up.
Thank you. I would like to mention,
We'll just have to wait 1 second until the
Okay.
resolution gets passed. Thank you. Okay, again, thank you for sharing so far. I know this takes a lot out of you to be able to share so much. So we want to pass this resolution to give you another 5 minutes. Unfortunately, that's the maximum that these delegations can go, just another 5 minutes. So I'm going to go to the committee now and pass a resolution that the 10-minute delegation be extended for 5 more minutes. I just need a mover. I'll go with Brian and a seconder. I'll go with Councillor Christangi. Okay, that's great. And I need to see if all is in favor. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, that is now carried. So with that, John, we'll give you another 5-minute delegation. And unfortunately, there's only one extension, it seems like. So hopefully we can hear the rest of what you have to say. So thank you so much and continue forward.
thank you. Okay, well, I'll go into the damage at the house right now because, first of all, the wraparound porch has been reattached after rotting and pulling away from the house by me and someone I hired. Its ceiling has been fixed twice by me, removing all the rotting wood, filling and painting, needs doing again right now. The square support posts that held up the ceiling rotted away and were replaced with round ones. The veranda railings were all rotted and removed from the porch. And all the wood on the floor and steps are gone. I replaced them with BC red cedar and installed them 15 years ago. The steps and the ceiling are all rotted again now and needs a complete overhaul, the whole porch, especially on the stairs on both sides. The second story sleeping cubicle over the north side of the house leaks water through the porch, rotting the wood ceiling below it. It should be completely removed from the house now. It's coming off the house as well. for the first time. The basement is a huge problem. It would be a massive repair cost. Since a weather event 8 or 9 years ago, after a huge snowfall in early spring, followed by 2 days of heavy rains, caused flooding throughout my basement for the first time. I now have constant leakage after significant rain events or sometimes after large snow melts. The thick stone walls are leaking in locations on all sides of the house. I must shop vac and use fans to keep the mold at bay. The floor is completely exposed now, virtually no cement left. I'm concerned about radon gases. This would be a massive repair cost. The back room on the west side of the basement is empty and needs to be completely ripped out. The walls and floors are severely damaged from water. The wiring was redone 20 years ago, but there are problems now in certain areas, living room and kitchen, with shorting out, and I don't use them at all anymore. They are probably fire hazards. The attic was rewired too, but I never want to go up there again. It was extremely gross. We've had a lot of critters in the house in 31 years, from bats to chipmunks to squirrels to... I keep finding ways to keep them out. Only 2 bathrooms are serviceable and working. The other 2 are shut down completely and need to be gutted. It's very hard to find the parts, and even the one that I'm using, I only have warm water coming out because we'd have to rip up the floors to get to it, and that's why I'm moving. There is no insulation in the southwest end of the house. In the winter, it's freezing. The kitchen cupboards and the bathrooms, walls crack. The cupboards are freezing cold when you open them up. And when the walls crack in the bedroom, I have to keep repainting them and fixing them. When it's cold, I keep the thermometer at 60 degrees in the 2 or 3 winter months. And I use a fan to circulate the air down from the 10-foot ceilings. I installed an expensive gas fireplace but the winter bills are super high. And in the spring, you have your insect infestations, ants, flies, spiders, centipedes, most inside the walls. You get out, a lot come through the pipes, but the rooms are not too much. And the windows are mostly all painted shut. I've opened up a few to get some fresh air flowing through, but the ground floor windows are a big problem. The storm windows are not original, as stated in the heritage statements, and here the home retains a significant amount of the original material. Here's the pictures that they took just last week, including the original doors. They are not the original doors. I threw the original doors out with all the original storms and with all the original stuff. These are like 3rd generation that I've rebuilt, and they need fixing again. I just took a little less than a ton, thinking I was moving out of here, out of the garage, and took them all to the dump. And if you could have seen what the original ones looked like, they looked nothing like what's on that house now, which all need replacing again. The exterior of the home is comprised of a soft red clay brick.
Sorry, John, that was another timer for your 5 minutes. So unfortunately, we do have to end your delegation for the evening. But we really appreciate you sharing so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Now, I have been told that John's partner would also like to come up. Now, I'll need, you're good? You'll be short. Okay, now we do need to pass a resolution for you as well. Lots of resolutions here to make sure that we're kind of following the order that needs to be followed. Once again, we are going to come back to the agenda. I'm going to put forward a resolution for the committee here. Resolve that the rules be temporarily suspended by an affirmative vote of 2/3 majority to permit the property owners partner to delegate. I'll need a mover. Okay, Councillor Cristangi. And a seconder, Councillor DeFabio. The banging outside really just adds to the essay. Yeah, good, thank you. Okay, so all in favor, we need a 2/3 majority. It looks like we're all in favor, okay. So with that then, we will invite you up to speak. Again, reiterating that there's a maximum of 10 minutes for the delegation. So go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you very much. Good evening, and thank you for allowing us to address the Heritage Committee. I'm here as a friend of Mr. Reed and someone who has visited 7 Patton Street regularly over the last several years. I am a bit confused as to why Mr. Reed is being forced to go through this process when he took the time to personally stop in 2 years ago for clarification from Town of Grimsby staff about what he understood was the rezoning of his home to multiple housing. During his in-person visit, town staff confirmed that it was zoned for multi-residential use, which could potentially include townhomes, apartments, or similar, and he was good to go. That was the town staff's words, on approaching a builder or developer for selling his property to fall in place within the major intensification area of Grimsby's downtown. The only conversation or suggestion at that time about history was a request to provide permission for access to the property prior to any demolition or new buildings for Indigenous research, certainly something that Mr. Reed and I would support. Returning from that meeting with the Town of Grimsby Planning Department staff, I can confirm that Mr. Reed was indeed elated and excited about moving forward with the possibilities for his property. Given that every building on the west side of Patton Street is currently being used as a multiplex or for apartments, and half of the east side is similarly utilized, the balance being either commercial or single-family residential. So the zoning and conversation that he had with the Town of Grimsby staff made complete sense to us. And furthermore, he's lived there for 31 years. He has seen structures, specifically to the south of him, being torn down over those years. Commercial establishments have been added and more have been approved, though some yet to be built. He was pleased to hear the news and began actively looking for a purchaser, as he explained, who might be interested in developing his property to fall in line with Grimsby's intensification. So when he received an offer to purchase 2 months ago, he and the potential purchaser were somewhat shocked, to say the least, to learn that the Town of Grimsby may wish to include the home in some type of heritage plan. To say that the house is heritage is stretching a little bit from the summary that I read. John did take some time explaining many of the nuances about the various parts of the home that are definitely no longer original. He is, in fact, probably the longest inhabitant of this house in the last 130 years of its existence in this community. So he can certainly explain better than anyone about its decaying and, of course, the incredible amount of money and effort that it would take to make that home comfortable for normal habitation. The house, as he explained, due to numerous water issues, too significant and too costly to repair, is frankly an unhealthy environment for anyone to live in. The windows and doors are old, yes, but they're not original. The deteriorating foundation, water seepage up through the basement floor and walls. The floors now slope as the foundation fails. Windows and doors are drafty. As he explained, heating in winter is impossible and costly. I will admit I wear a cargo when I visit in the winter months. You simply need to. Much of the plumbing no longer works. The electrical is a fire concern. I could go on, but I know that Mr. Reed did expand a little bit on it. From what I have researched, there is little that would signify significant cultural savings to the town of Grimsby. Grimsby did not include a cultural heritage landscape in its 2025 official plan. The conversations about Grimsby's special places, significant cultural heritage landscapes in the town of Grimsby go back to 2015 and earlier. An awful lot has changed in the town of Grimsby, specifically downtown, and all of Grimsby in the last decade or two. Much of it for the better. With housing growth, intensification, we have a vibrant downtown, all of which makes complete sense for 7 Patton Street. It's property to be included, as we were advised 2 years ago, to be developed as multi-residential. It's a downtown property, best used for commercial or multi-residential or a combination of both. The people interested in purchasing the property are well-established Grimsby business people, and they're looking forward to working with the community, adding additional tax revenue, investment, and jobs for Grimsby. Allowing it to be demolished and for the continued beautification and expansion of downtown Grimsby is the only option for us, and I think for most, that makes sense for the community itself. Trying to save an old building, I can appreciate, but the parts of it that are salvageable are just that. They can be salvaged and repurposed. I am in the construction industry, and we often go out looking for the bricks of the type of house that John has for repurposing and reusing them on other building sites in recreating a little bit of old into new. Sooner or later, you're delaying the inevitable. It's like keeping one of our loved ones on life support. Sadly, 7 Patton Street, it's just a matter of time before it's going to crumble. So we can only hope that we do the right thing and allow Mr. Reed and I to move forward and the sale and purchase of it to go through as well. Thank you for your time. It's appreciated.
Thank you very much for your delegation. Do you mind if we get your name to include in the resolution, or do you want to keep it as partner? Are you sure? Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So with that then, what's going to happen is we will, we've received the delegations. We'll move forward with our resolution, and then we'll head to the research report that's been put forward by staff, and then we can have a conversation about the property and engage in a conversation with the delegates. So that's kind of how the process will work. So I have a resolution here. That the delegation by John Reed, the property owners, oh my gosh, okay, let me start that again. Okay, we have a resolution that the delegation by John Reed as property owner's partner be received. A mover, Councillor DeFlavio. A seconder, Brian. All in favor? Carried. Okay, thank you. All right, so again, we've received the delegations. Thank you again for sharing. We are now going to move right into the designation report that's been prepared by Garrett. So Garrett, he's going to present about 7 Patton Street. Afterwards, we will proceed with questions and a dialogue about the property. Sound good? Okay, Garrett, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair. The property at 7 Patton Street has been listed on the Municipal Heritage Register since its creation in 2008. Prior to the creation of the register, 7 Patton Street was also included on the town's LACAC architectural inventory list since the 1990s. On April 9th, 2025, the property owners submitted a complete register removal request for the property, stating that they intend to demolish the structure. The town has 60 days to provide a decision to this request. In accordance with best practices, the property was fully evaluated against the Ontario Regulation 906 designation criteria. During this review, staff assessed all available information in consultation with the Grimsby Historical Society. Staff have concluded that the property has met 5 out of 9 prescribed criteria of the Ontario Regulation 906. The property meets the criteria for historical and associative value because 7 Patton Street has direct associations with the history of Grimsby's Methodist community, including the lives of Reverends William Hawk and Richard Foreman, as well as with Albert Hawk, who was the proprietor of the A.F. Hawk General Store in downtown Grimsby for nearly 40 years. The house was built for the widow of Reverend William Hawk, a Methodist minister who came to Grimsby to act as pastor at the Methodist Church at 8 Ontario Street and Rock Chapel above the escarpment. The Hawk family had connections at Grimsby Park, having attended camp meetings in the years prior coming to Grimsby. The property was sold in 1896 to Caroline Smith and Reverend Richard Foreman, who lived in the home, ministering to Methodist congregations in Grimsby and across Niagara until his death at the subject property in 1907. Reverend Foreman also had the distinction of administering the town of Grimsby's memorial service for Queen Victoria in 1901 as a part of a multi-denominational group of Christian ministers. Caroline Smith was a member of the Women's Institute and hosted meetings likely hosted meetings of the group at her home. 7 Patton Street also has the potential to yield information about James Doran, the builder of the property. James Doran acted as town councillor, was twice the Reeve of Grimsby, and was responsible for opening Doran Avenue. Further, the property provides insight into the style of architecture that was offered as a part of James Doran's building portfolio during the last 19th century. It is also one of 2 known James Doran residential buildings surviving in the town. The property meets the criteria for contextual value because 7 Patton Street represents one of the oldest structures in Patton Street's urban fabric, demonstrating the 19th century parceling and development of the southern side of Patton Street between what was formerly Main Street and now Livingston Avenue and St. Joseph's Roman Catholic Church. As one of the oldest streets in Grimsby, the corridor was used as a trail between the lakeshore and the mills that operated along Gibson Street during the early 19th century. Based on the assessment of cultural heritage value or interest, staff recommend that the property at 7 Patton Street be designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Staff have concluded that the property has met 5 out of 9 prescribed criteria of the Ontario Regulation 906. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Garrett, for your presentation.
Recording stopped.
Can we keep going? Technical difficulties.
Recording in progress.
Okay, we are back. Okay, thank you, Garrett, for your presentation about 7 Patton. So at this point, I'd like to open it up to the committee to ask questions to staff as well as to the delegates. To Councilor DeFlavio, I saw you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, through you. So the delegates mentioned the condition of the house. Have you had a chance to see inside the house? I'm sorry if I missed it in your report, because it talks about the delegation spoke of, both delegations spoke of the conditions of the house, things falling apart. Besides the exterior, did you get to go into the house and evaluate it on the inside? And again, if I zoned out during that part, I apologize. But if you could reiterate that for us.
Recording stopped.
That's probably better because I'm sounding like an idiot. So if I'm not being recorded, it's probably better while I ramble on. I think my point's coming across. I'd like to know more details about the conditions of the house, because designating a house that is not in good condition and that needs, that is closer to demolition than it is to restoration is not something that I feel comfortable with. So if you can elaborate on the conditions of the house, that would make me feel more comfortable.
Through the chair. So just two kind of thoughts on this. So the first is, just for a reminder for the committee, the Ontario regulation assessment is separated from the condition of the house. So that doesn't, the actual condition isn't legislated. So I was just going to add that. So that's why it's not within the actual designation research report. But Garrett and I did attend the property with John and his partner, and we did have an opportunity to look a little bit inside the house in the basement, and then Garrett and I also walked the perimeter of the property. I did share with John at the counter as well that we have assessed the masonry, and I did share with him that from a conservation standpoint, the masonry is actually in quite good shape. The brick structure, we were only able to identify one crack at the back. And then the foundation, we were able to look on the interior, and there was some evidence like of moisture coming in based on like some of the breakdown of whatever is like on top of the masonry, but we didn't see like a significant amount of effervescence or leaching happening, which is typically what happens when you have excessive water coming in. But there's a lot of mitigative strategies you can do when it comes to masonry foundations. And we actually have a site that was designated not too long ago. Theirs was in a lot more I would say rough shape than this one in particular. But what we did is we put together a conservation master plan where we walked around the perimeter with them and highlighted areas of deterioration and showed them how to do the repairs. And then they actually applied for the grant funding and were selected, and they're going to be doing the repairs to the foundations in accordance with that conservation master plan. And so in this case, we would do a similar thing where we'd walk around the property with them and identify areas of failure and how to repair them. These foundations are all lime-based mortars, and they are intended to be maintained over time. And so when you see deterioration happening, there is mitigative strategies that can be done. So from a conservation standpoint, with our background in conservation, that's our opinion of the exterior masonry. And then as far as like the wood elements on the building, if they have been replaced over time and they're maybe not the original ones, reproductions have been protected by the town, like property owners who've wanted their work to be preserved. But we also didn't have an opportunity to actually date the age of those materials. So I would want to weigh into that before determining how old they were. So that's just some comments on that, but I do think that there is a path forward for the structure.
Through you, Chair. Okay, so thank you for that detailed response. A path forward for the structure is one thing, but I'm concerned about imposing unrealistic expectations of restoration on a property that is beyond repair. So you're telling me that it's not beyond repair, okay. Because while I see the 5 of 9 criteria that it meets for designation, at the same time, I think about what does that actually mean? Like, who are these people in the context historically? What is the house in the historical context? What is the house in the context of the neighborhood? So in the neighborhood, it's kind of mixed, because you have the old St. Joseph's Church down the road, which is a pretty important historical site, but you have an Esso station across the street. There's the house next door. I don't know if it was a tear down and a rebuild, but it's definitely not a heritage home. You've got a commercial use next door on the other side, and a low-rise couple doors down. So it's quite an eclectic neighborhood. So I feel like the only reason this house is still there is because nobody saw the value in tearing it down before. It's not because it has heritage value or historical value, but just that nobody saw the value of connecting it to the adjacent lot. So I get what you're saying, but I think we also have to weigh if it's genuinely of value, and if we want to go against the homeowner's wishes and designate against their will in a house that is very in the gray for me. It's not a home run from a designation perspective. So I think that that's a discussion that needs to be had, and my opinion is just one. And I'm not saying one way or the other, but I think that those are all things that we need to consider, that the location of the home, why it's still there, the condition of the home, those are all things that are important parts of the discussion, not just it meets 5 of the 9 criteria. And even, I think some of those are questionable, frankly, but I mean, my opinion is not as valuable as yours. You guys are heritage planners. I'm just a guy. So I have to take your word for it. I'll let the rest of the committee speak and ask questions and maybe come back to me at the end. Chair, thank you.
It sounds like either Bianca or Garrett would like to respond, but thank you for your comments, Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Councillor DeFlavio, I just wanted to speak to your first question about the original material on the house and the condition of it. So for the house being approximately like 130 years old, I do find the condition of the home like as to be expected and pretty comparable to a lot of homes in town of that age. I did also want to speak to the windows and doors on the home. They were all wood from what staff could see, and they were in fairly good repair. It sounds like they have been rebuilt before, but they were in keeping with what would have been with the home originally, in staff's opinion. I did also want to note that the home didn't actually meet any architectural criteria. It was solely based on the associative value and the contextual value of the house as well. It just does retain a lot of original material, or what would be perceived as in keeping with the period of the home. Thank you.
Thank you for adding that, Garrett, and Bianca, if you'd like to add some more.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. So I just wanted to add one thing, because I think what Councillor DeFlavio was touching on with the criteria, whether it meets or not, I think the answer is yes. It's just a matter of how strong that yes is. So I know because of like the assessments we've been doing for the last like two plus years, those have always been our best of the best, you know, meeting like 8 out of 9 criteria. Like those are, you know, ones we've known for a very long time that need to be protected. So I think it's good for you to see like the balance of what that looks like. And we have another one on the agenda tonight where you see one where it kind of somewhat meets it. We still technically have some yeses there, but it's like, how strong is that yes? So I just wanted to kind of give that context to the committee. And so sometimes it's yes, but how strong is that yes? So I just wanted to add that for as you're kind of discussing it.
Okay, thank you for your insights, Bianca and Garrett, and your comments again, Councillor DeFlavio. Do we have any other questions or comments on this side of the table? I guess Councillor Christiangi, go ahead, yes.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I have to agree with Councillor DeFlavio, actually, because I feel like, you know, it can meet the criteria, but if the condition of the house itself inside is not really feasible to restore for the owner, it's a tricky one. I mean, yeah, you could patch the foundation, but if it's a fire hazard with electrical, and if 2 out of 3 bathrooms aren't working, and then you have a whole series of issues in the house, it's hard to say to an owner, yeah, we're going to designate this because because of the story of this. This is a really hard situation, because emotionally, I would just say, yes, I get it, and we want to help you. Unfortunately, in these situations, we have to sort of go with that criteria, and otherwise we would be doing that for everybody. But this one's unique because if you're saying the condition of the house itself is not really that salvageable, then we're in an entirely different situation. So, I mean, it's easy to take your word for it. I mean, maybe if it would take probably maybe an expert opinion on some of these things to say, this is not, like, I'm worried if you're saying this is a fire hazard and we say, oh yeah, you got to keep this, and then that work is not done because you can't afford to do that work, then where are we, right? So that's what kind of bothers me, is not knowing how bad the condition of the house actually is. It's hard to make this decision without knowing that. I mean, I know you guys did a walkthrough, but I don't know. So that's where I am right now.
Thank you, Councillor Cristangi.
Yeah, so through the chair, just kind of speak to like how this process would work. Let's say it was a designated site and we had this concern come forward where there's a little bit more time to discuss these things. Typically, we would have like an engineer report completed and then the municipality would have that peer reviewed. So it's kind of hard to see at this point coming from like a perspective where you have like a personal investment, like interest in something, like it should be assessed by a professional, kind of separating the emotional side of it. And that's what we've done with the assessment from our perspective is it's actually our requirement to separate the two. And so from a professional standpoint, what we did see, we have seen it be comparable to other properties. As far as the like fire and safety side of things, that's something that is assessed when alterations would be done on the house from a building perspective. But yeah, that would typically be how we'd handle it. We'd have a peer review of a engineer report or whatever report study that's done, and that would be completely unbiased, and then we're able to make the decision. So I think if maybe there was a situation where we didn't have the demolition threat on us that, we have 60 days to make a decision here, and we didn't have that quick timeline, maybe that's something we could say is like, have some kind of study or something to determine that threat. But yeah, that's just typically how we would handle it if it was like a different scenario where time wasn't so tight.
Thank you for answering that. Is there a way to do any other studies before? Because I guess we have a deadline of June, like early June, so there's no way to do any further studies or assessment from the town's perspective?
So through you, Sarah, the chair. So there is the 60-day timeline that's legislated. And as far as legislation goes, the condition of the home doesn't fall within the criteria. That is not a legislative item. So that's something that's completely separate. So the timeline would continue as long as the demolition request is in.
Thank you for clarifying. Any comments? Yes, Councillor DeFlavio.
Just a couple more questions. So the part on the back of the house, and I don't know if it's a bay window or whatever that, are those both additions? Was the original house just the square or the rectangle, and then those other pieces were added on?
Through you, Chair. So the initial part of the house was constructed in the 1880s, and before 1900, the rear brick addition was added on, and by 1914, we know the house had the current footprint that it has, except for the detached garage. Thank you.
Now that you say it, I see it in your report. I apologize for missing it. Just because we have allowed for demolition of additions in the past that weren't part of the original structure. Now, I don't know if that's helpful or not, if we designated just the original footprint of the house, and that would allow for more flexibility for somebody who wanted to redevelop the site. I'm fine with that. If that's, I don't know if that helps you or not, but yeah, so I'm trying to find a reasonable middle ground here. There are parts that clearly don't look like part of the original house on there. So yeah, so the suggestion from our heritage staff is that we designate the entire home with all of the additions on it as well, because you said there's no architectural features that are mentioned. So
through you, Chair. So the proposed attributes were listed in the back of the designation report, but if the council does decide to issue a notice of intention to designate for the property, we would want to work with the property owners to kind of review all of those attributes. So if excluding, say, like the garage and that rear addition, through further evaluation is something that's appropriate to do, that's something that staff could be supportive of. And best practice is to keep as much original material with the building as possible. I did want to add in that the point of designation isn't to stop change on the site, it's to guide and manage change over time. So an example would be if the whole property was designated and someone wanted to come in and make an alteration to the property or add another unit, something like that, expand to the rear of the dwelling, that could all be facilitated through the heritage permit process, which would help the town guide and manage change on the whole parcel rather than just, kind of the footprint of the house itself. Thank you.
Thank you for providing that clarification. That's good to know that they're, through this process, of course, the town wants to work with the homeowners to make this an agreeable designation. This isn't meant to be a punishment. The designation is meant to be a celebration of built heritage for the town. I think the town's also done a lot of work over the last couple of years to show that in the terms of heritage grant programs and working on tax incentives for property owners, even just having heritage planning staff on call essentially for answering needs and to kind of providing that assessment. So this isn't meant to be a punishment. This is the law itself is meant to commemorate, to preserve the built heritage for future generations. And it was really touching to hear the stories, John, that you shared about all of the work that you put into the house over several years. It sounds like there were a lot of issues that you single-handedly mitigated, and it sounds like you've done a lot of that work already, so I appreciate that work to get the house up to where it is right now. And it was also really touching to hear the stories you have of your wife in the house and the changes that you've made and the music and the life that was lived there. And I think if we were to go forward with designating, I think I would like to see some of that story into the designation as well. If that's like just to tell the fuller picture up until today. I'm not saying the conversation's still happening, but I think, the story doesn't just have to end, it's not just one era or one family that we're commemorating when we do this kind of work. I see other hands up on this side. So Councillor Christianchi, go ahead.
Thank you, through Chair. Is there a property beside it on either side that's on the register or designated?
Through the chair. Yeah, so next door is the old funeral home. I don't know the complete history of that property. I know there is some significance tied to that property in particular, but that one is, and then the one across the street is also on the register. And then the First Catholic Church in Grimsby is on the register, which is just up the street. And I think there may be another one on the same side of the street that's up a little. So there's quite a few on there that were identified, and they've been identified for some time.
Thank you for that question, because that brings up something that I wanted to ask was about the cultural heritage landscape for Patton Street. So it's in the report that was sent along, and it was mentioned in the delegation as well. So I was wondering if you could give a bit of context about how that came about, why it came about, what are we doing with it now? Because those are identified for a reason, and they kind of identify these I wanted to say clumps of heritage, but these areas of particular heritage value for the town. So I just wanted to just get a little bit of context about that heritage landscape specifically, and then maybe how it connects to the register and that story.
Yes, so through the chair, so the Cultural Heritage Landscape Grimsby Special Places document was prepared in 2015, and the status of that document is that council endorsed it. So it has endorsement from council, and I like to refer to it almost as like a register, but for CHLs. And so it's not anything that no formal CHL has been implemented, but it is a document that we reference for important landscapes in the municipality. And so that's its status. That's why it's referenced within the document. And then within that cultural heritage landscape, the 19th and 20th century architecture along Patton Street was identified as an attribute of that cultural landscape. The idea is in the future, if we want to identify cultural landscapes and protect them, the idea would be to preserve as much of those attributes as we manage change, basically to give warrant to that area being a landscape in the future. So again, like integrity of the corridor, trying to keep as many of those pieces together is the idea of it, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Garrett, you'd like to add to that?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I did just want to reiterate that staff, we are here to help heritage property owners. One of the benefits of being a heritage property owner is that, for example, say if you did put the property on the market, you wanted to try and sell it to a developer, we are here to, meet with interested parties like we did at the house that day to talk about the development potential of the property. We have had examples in town like the Nels house on the corner of Main Street East and Nels Road. That was a similar example. Same with Elman Mountain. Sorry, that's kind of everything I had to say, but I'll throw it back to the chair. Thank you.
Sorry, you'd like to respond to a question? Right, if there wasn't really a specific question that was asked, but if you would like to respond to a particular point that was made, okay, all right, you can head up and respond to a point. I do feel like I should reiterate the purpose of the Heritage Advisory Committee. So we are an involuntary group of community members that have come, and our role is to assess properties based on the technical merit, based on the 906 for Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. But if you'd like to respond to that specifically, that would be welcome.
The point is that because of the information we received, it's too late to go back now. We've bought another home. We were told we were good to go. The last 2 years of my life have been spent building up to this point. Now my partner and them, they're gonna move into the house. I gotta get another mortgage. And when are we going to sell the house? When am I going to join them? That's the problem. Is everything's? I'm gobsmacked. Everything is so lightly taken. Like we walked through the house, we looked at it. I told you, well, just come back when it's raining, and you'll see the water coming in 20 places. It's not. Well, we assessed it. You assessed it, and then to write all these things that are original, but we think they're pretty original. And like, our futures are at stake here, and you guys just, it's like, oh, we're here to work with you. You're missing the point. We dropped the ball. We all dropped the ball. And if us to be able to go forward now, where do I go? What do I do now? Do I hire lawyers? Where do we go? Do I have to, is it my only recourse? Are you forcing me to, it's almost like blackmail. Like, I already made the point that in 2027, Nicole told us that if you didn't have to designate this house or want to demolish it, if you can hold on, you'll be good to go. But then I was told that, no, we know now, we've opened the can of worms. So we can try and change it any time now because you want to designate it. Like, I thought you're working with us. I thought you're trying to help people. Some people, it's not black and white. It's not those little forms. It's their lives. It's people that enriched this town, that helped that house, that supported heritage, but didn't know that this thing could possibly happen. It's ridiculous. It's immoral, and it's like bears on illegal. And I know that you've had these laws passed and we have to go through this, but geez, here's where the compassion should come. It's not about we're trying to laugh. This is supposed to be fun and commemorate things. This is something that's real, that's really going to affect people's life. People that are recovering from MS are involved in this. People with health issues are involved in this. And all we want to do is move into our home, and we have to do it now. We can't wait for months and years. That's all I want to say.
Thank you for your response. And I understand that this is a difficult situation. Just a reminder again, I think the purpose of the committee is to assess the property based on the 906 that was put forward, and all we can do is to recommend or not recommend. That's the purpose of the committee. I think your comments have a lot of validity, and that would be something that council should be hearing. The committees, we're purely technical here. We're not political here. We see a report that's come through. We have heritage professionals on staff that have given their professional opinion, and we're having a conversation, asking questions about the report, about what's been studied, about what's being brought forward, and we recognize that there are, that of course it's difficult, and so as part of the committee, we're here to be like, to say, well, these are the steps that the town takes to support property owners in the process. So all we're doing is what we do for every property that comes through, essentially. And I'm sorry that this is causing distress, this conversation, but it has to happen out in the open, and these are the conversations that happen for every property, because again, we're here to look for the heritage value of the house, architectural, associative, and contextual. And this house does have contextual and associative value. I see the reason why I ask about the cultural heritage landscape is because Patton Street has a story, a strong story attached to it, and there are a lot of built heritage that are still on the street. We still have a lot of assets on the street. And that's something that we want to protect. There has been a lot of changes to it. There has been zoning changes to the street. To me, in my opinion, that to me is more reason to protect what's there. That's my opinion on the committee. We all have our own opinions. Again, we're a technical committee. We have no politics. We're looking at the 906, and we're basing the research off the 906. Councilor Flavio, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I think you did an excellent job of explaining what the committee is here to do. To be clear, we're not here to hear individual stories about, sadly, that's not, we have to make our decision based on the merits of the designation, whether, now, at the same time, we can question the merits of that designation, and we can say, because we can't pretend, like, we want to be as objective as possible, but there's obviously subjectivity in the report. If the homeowner was to hire a heritage planner with a different end in mind, the goal of our heritage planners is to preserve every building that needs to be preserved, that deserves to be preserved. There are also heritage planners who would be perhaps begin with a different end in mind, and that is to look at whether this house is worthy of saving. And so, we could pretend that it's objective, and I agree, everything that we do is based on the regulation. But there is definitely subjectivity in it, and we do have to make a decision based on whether we think the criteria, if it meets those criteria. Now, we do also need to trust our staff, as a committee. Council can make a different decision, and a couple of us are members of council. But I think here, at this committee, you're 100% right in the we need to go based on, does this meet the heritage criteria or not? So if we believe as a committee that it meets the heritage criteria, we designate it. We recommend designation. I apologize. We don't designate it. We recommend designation. Then council can make the ultimate decision. And if the homeowners want to come to council as a delegation, I would suggest you do that and come forward as a delegation. But when you do that, as much as your individual story is, it's a heartfelt story and it's important, it's not what needs to be considered in the designation of the house. In the designation of the house, I think if you focus, and you don't need to respond because you'll have a chance to speak if you want to come before council. You need to focus on the conditions of the house. If you take photos of that water coming in, it'll rain before the next council meeting. If you present evidence to support the non-designation rather than a story, because as much as your story is important, and I don't want to diminish the importance of your story, we cannot consider an individual story when it comes to designation, unless that story is important in the designation itself, right? So I don't want, like, if it was based on what you said tonight, I would say, yes, let's not designate it at all, but we need to consider the merit of the designation. And so come back with evidence to support all of the other stuff, and not here, come to council, and council will make that ultimate decision, okay? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take your place. I'm trying to support you, but I also want to help them. If there is evidence to support what they're saying, it needs to be presented, and they'll have some time to do that. What is the longest we can wait before the recommendation, I guess, is my last question, so that way that gives them time to prepare their side and council time to consider everything.
Through the chair, so yes, the May 28th is the absolute longest we can wait because of the legislative timelines. I just wanted to provide some clarification. The role of heritage staff and CAP members, so whether you're on staff or you're a consultant, your goal is to be completely objective to any personal items related to the site. It's entirely based on our assessment of 906. So even when it comes down to condition, that isn't supposed to be factored into the 906. It's entirely based on the building's merit, and it's supposed to be free from influence from any biases. So that's essentially what our recommendation is, strictly on fact, primary sources, and our assessment of those primary sources. So just wanted to clarify that's what that is. Sometimes when you have like a planner from the outside, they may look at it from what's important to Ontario as a whole, when the intent of the legislative criteria for a community does it matter to this community, and is it important to this community and the values of the community? And so sometimes I can see that happening where it's like taken as a look from a more broader context, but the intent is to be specific to your community. We just sometimes have more information than someone coming in that doesn't maybe have access to all the data we have, but like above that, everyone should be doing this objectively. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you for providing that clarification, Bianca, and thank you for sharing your comments, Councillor Flavia. It was also really helpful to know what to expect when it comes to council as a council member. So thank you for sharing that. Any other comments, Brian? I see a hand up. So yes, please go ahead.
Through you, Chair. I have a couple. Excuse me, a couple of questions. First, a procedural one. So the application was to be removed, the property removed, but then the resolution, as it looks like we're going to see, is actually to designate. So can you comment on if we don't approve the request to designate, then would we then address the request for removal in the same as a separate item? Just not clear on kind of procedure how that would work.
Through the chair, so we have like a formal submission at the town that's known as a notice of intention of removal / demolition. And so that is paperwork the property owner fills out, and within that paperwork, if they intend to demolish, they have to state it. Otherwise, it'll just go into the work plan. If they state demolition, now we have 60 days to respond to them. So we have to have a decision to them by that May 28th meeting. That's our last chance to give them a decision. If we don't give a decision, the building will just be demolished. If that's their intent, it'll be automatically taken off. So our recommendation is that it be protected long-term. The committee can turn that down, pass another resolution saying that they recommend it be removed or demolished.
Okay, so to clarify, by passing the resolution that recommends the designation, and that kind of cancels out the what came forward as a request to demolish. And if we go forward with not recommending to designate, then that kind of moves forward the recommendation to demolish. Does that make sense, Brian? Okay. Bianca's going to add something else.
Through the chair, so because you're not actually the ones making the decision on it, your recommendation is that it be designated, and then council would endorse that. And so council either has to decide the way the legislation is written that it be removed or that it be designated. So by council doing designated, that's their decision, and then that the property owners will be notified. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You had other questions, so go ahead, Brian.
Through you, Chair. So a couple other ones about just the property and the neighborhood in general. Are there any other properties on Patton Street that are actually designated? I know you mentioned there was a few, I think you named about 4 that were possibly still on the register. Are any in that vicinity, kind of on that street, are any of them actually designated?
Thank you, through you, Chair. So there is a property under review, the church itself, at the end of Patton Street, but there are multiple properties that are being triaged from the register, kind of positioned to be evaluated to see if they merit designation. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. So this, I think very correctly, it was 2008, this is when the register was created. This is one of those properties on there. Remind me how many properties we currently have on the register, please.
Through you, Chair, about 550.
Through you, Chair. And then other question around, you mentioned, I think Bianca, you mentioned as well, it's one of the oldest houses on Patton Street. And do you know what is the oldest and how many of the other houses? I think there was, looking on the street view, there might be some newer ones that are rebuilds. Just maybe get some understanding of what are, how does this sit in sort of the house age in the area, and how many others are that may be older than it?
Through you, Chair. So the oldest building that we know of on Doran Street is the church itself, which I think is about 1860s, 1870s, just kind of from the evaluation that we started on it. The house across the street from 7 Patton Street, it's a wood frame house, same kind of building era. But the remainder of the houses on Patton Street, I believe, are probably from about 1900. And then there's one known Sears catalog house on that street as well. But some of the other buildings include like the church manse, the former funeral home next door to 7 Patton Street. I did also want to speak to, so the church at 7, or the church at the north end of Patton Street, it's the, St. Joseph's Church. It was built for the Irish Catholics, and one of the earliest Irish Catholic families to come into town were the Dorans, and that is actually the sons of the Dorans are who built 7 Patton Street, and the parents of the Dorans are, I think, the first family to be buried at St. Joseph's at the north end of the street as well, just for a bit of context about the area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for providing that extra context, Garrett, and thanks for your questions, Brian. Any other comments or questions from the committee before we go to our resolution and our vote? Okay, so I want to thank everyone for being very thorough with your questions and your comments, and to thank you again to the delegates for coming today and sharing about the property. Okay, we are going to move forward with our resolution, and it's a long one. I'm making sure it's the right one. Okay. All right, so our resolution that Report 2506, Heritage Property Recommendation Report for 7 Patton Street be received, and that the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that the dwelling at 7 Patton Street be designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act as a property that council believes to be of cultural heritage significance, as it meets 5 out of 9 of the Ontario Regulation 906 criteria for designation under the Ontario Heritage Act. I'm looking for a mover. We don't have a mover, and that means we probably don't have a seconder. So it looks like we are recommending not to designate 7 Patton Street. Okay, so then I defeat.
Yep.
Okay. And that's it.
Well, so we need,
Whoa.
no, we need to pass the resolution, so we need a mover and a seconder, and then they vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've ever done a defeated. So, okay.
So you still need a mover and a seconder.
So then I need a mover. So I didn't vote on it. So now I need a new mover
You need a mover and a seconder.
to,
Consider it.
just to put it, okay.
Do you want me to explain?
Yes, Counselor DeFlavio, go ahead.
So could we request, because I don't want to make a decision that we regret. Could we request a structural assessment? Could we request like a financial feasibility report? Like, I don't know, I've never been put in this position before. I don't think, I think that any house can be repaired. So it's not a question of whether it's reparable or not. It's the cost, it's the feasibility of it. Is there something like that? I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years and I've never, so I trust you, like, if you could tell us what other steps we could take, that might help.
So through the chair, the only assessment we have is by the heritage professionals on staff. That's the assessment that's been conducted. That's the information we've been able to confirm that is done objectively. There's no bias. It's a study of materials. It's of our opinion that the structure can be repaired. In talking with the building department, this isn't the first time we've had this issue. There was another site that we had a similar issue where there was question on the structure. And in working with the building team, they've always said that it can be repaired and they would work with us and the property owners to do something where we work with mitigative strategies and things like that so that there's mitigative solutions. There's no expectation that everything's going to be repaired right away, but there's a lot of mitigative strategies that you can do just to improve the condition of the structure. And we've done that with many properties in the town. And so I don't want this to be seen as there's no hope for the building. There is a lot of mitigative strategies and a lot of, conservation master plans that we've done for property owners. We've also done, through our education, where there is a lot of mitigative strategies because these properties, the property owners used to, operate them. These were household jobs that were done. And so there's a lot of things that you can do. So I just want to be clear with that. There was also another site, just to remind the committee, that there was another similar scenario talking about the condition of the building. And during some of the discovery work with the new property owners, they actually found so many amazing original elements hidden between the walls. And, we have a full kind of path forward where we're adding an accessory residential unit or additional residential unit. We're adding an addition. And so we've actually added more density to the property. There's going to be an opportunity for them to have an additional income with the additional dwelling unit. And the idea is that some of that change on the site is going to help subsidize the restoration of the house. And so this is a site where we could see something like that also happening. And so I think there's a lot of options for the building that we should, again, remember as the committee, our goal is to preserve important resources in the town. There is a path forward, and there's a lot of mechanisms that have been put in place by the team as far as, one-on-one conservation advice, offering of conservation master plans that are quite costly in the field, and that's something staff provides to property owners. We have a grant program that's intended to work alongside the master plan, and then council's also allocated funding for incentives. So there's a lot of packaging to go with designation, and there's a lot of options. So I don't want to say that there's no hope for the building. There's a lot of interim solutions and long-term plans. So I just wanted to share that. We can't delay it because we have a 60-day timeline. So either way, I'm going to be bringing something to council on the 28th because we can't stop the timeline, and it would be a default decision, which I I wouldn't recommend doing. And as for if the property owner wanted to remove the threat of the demolition request and enable us to do a structural assessment, that's something that they may be able to put on the table. But as far as the legislative timelines, right now the clock's ticking and we have to make a decision.
Excuse me, I think you'll need to go, if you'd like to respond to the question, you'll need to just go to the, yeah, thank you.
Respectfully, if I can address your concerns about the value of the house and everything else, I'm actually in the design build business. I do renovations. I have one particular home that I've been working on for 4 years in another municipality from 1867. Those people to date, it's a much better built home than what Mr. Reed's is, have spent close to $1 million renovating that home. We still have probably another $500,000 to spend renovating that particular home. I do not see windows alone for that house, brand new windows throughout, were $180,000, just to put it into perspective, to have them truly architecturally done and merited for this home. The house at 7 Patton, respectfully, you have seen the pictures and everything else. For anyone to fathom spending even the $500,000 that it would take to renovate that home, I think is respectfully almost foolish for the condition. Again, that foundation is failing. I've been there when water is coming up through the floor of the basement. There's mold, there's so much to be done. Where do you stop? Where do you start? Yes.
Thank
Can
you.
anything be repaired? Of course it can.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you for your question. I do want to remind the committee that we are looking at the 906 that's put in front of us, and we aren't designating, we're not recommending to designate based on the condition of the house. The only reason why I want to remind the committee of this is because we are looking towards these reports from what has been prepared from staff, and I don't want this to put into question future reports that we are always looking towards the 906 for. We don't always have the delegates here to share their stories. We appreciate the delegates being here to share your stories and the concerns that you have, as well as the seeming nightmare that has happened for the past 2 years. I'm not sure what happened with the other technical things and who you talked to and how this happened the way that it did, and I'm sorry. But again, I just want to remind the community that we're here to look at the 906, which has been clearly revealed to us, the people that lived in the house, the contextual value of the area. That's what we're looking for. The conditions and the individuals associated with the house can go to council for the stories that they shared. I just want to remind people of that one more time, because going forward, as more designations come to us, the 906 is what we always go to, and we don't always have the delegates here to contest what's being put forward. Again, that's it. I don't know what to do at this point. So with that, if we are, with the information we have, I'm going to move with a mover then to defeat the resolution. Is that to just put it on the table? A mover to put this on the table. So that we can defeat the resolution. So I need a mover to put it on the table. And yes, Walter, you have your hand up.
Yes, if I may, the committee has an option to approve the resolution, to put forward another resolution to not recommend a designation, or to recommend that the designation not be placed on the property, or the committee can just remain silent. Those are the three options that you have. But it's always best to have a resolution to recommend one way or the other. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification, Walter. We're always appreciative of you to tell us all of that insight. So the options then are also, if you'd like to, we could amend the resolution if we don't like it. That's another option. But either way, I need to have a mover and a seconder to put this on the table for whatever the next steps are, is what it sounds like, whether we're defeating or amending or being silent. Or if someone wants to propose something else. I'm just going to take me off mic so I can make sure that I'm clear about what's next. I'm just going to get some clarification.
Yeah, so through the chair, just for clarification for the committee, you're making a decision here. The resolution before you is the staff recommendation. If you want something different, you can amend it. You can propose something different. This is just a drafted resolution. So if there's something else everyone wants, I just want to again remind the committee, reiterate what Sarah was saying, we have a lot of triaging that we're still going to be doing on this list. This property's been recognized since 2008, and long before that, since the 1990s, it's been recognized as being of value. And so I just want the committee to have that mindset that we have a lot of work still to do. And so just to, again, like Sarah was saying, focus on that 906 and just making sure that you're confident in that recommendation.
Through you, Chair. So you put it on the table. None of the three of us were stepping up to support it. Does it end there? We weren't ready to support the designation. Whether we change the wording of it or not, I think that kind of speaks to the request, does it not?
So through the chair, yeah, you guys can propose something else for the text. Walter said you can remain silent, but I'm assuming you want to make some type of recommendation to council on this.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm getting the feeling that somebody may be willing to put a motion forward to recommend that the property not be designated. Is that where you're going?
Okay, so maybe to the committee, just a refresher. So the Municipal Heritage Committee is a function of the Heritage Act. So the Heritage Act says if you have a Heritage Committee, they must be consulted before designation can be pursued. So we're consulting you. And we need a recommendation to bring to council. The staff recommendation will accompany the Heritage Committee recommendation.
Okay, so it sounds yes, if
So
yeah.
No resolution, that means no recommendation, right? So no motion means no recommendation. So do we have to make a recommendation to council?
It sounds like we're encouraged to make a recommendation, and if we don't want to make a recommendation to designate, then we're making a recommendation not to designate. Yes.
Just like speaking to the legislative requirements, the Heritage Committee has to consult on designation. So council goes to the meeting, say council wants to protect the building, and you didn't do any recommendation, then we run the risk of the property being vulnerable and not being able to designate it. So I would recommend that we pass a resolution here today, no matter what your recommendation is. We need something from the committee.
If I could, Chair. Procedurally, I don't think it's necessary for us to pass a recommendation or a recommendation by silence is the same as a recommendation procedurally. So not making a decision is the same as making a decision in the opposite. I mean, you could look at the procedural bylaws if you want, but recommendation against by silence is a pretty accepted Robert's Rule of Order. If we need a mover to not designate, that's fine, but I think whatever happens, there will be discussion of this at council. So we don't need to have a motion here. There's going to be further designation. Our staff is going to bring a report forward to council regardless of what we say. And I think in the silence, I think Councillor Costangi and I can both speak to what happened at this committee level, if that's what you want to happen. I'm fine with either way, is what I'm saying.
Through the chair, I just checked the legislation. It says if the council of the municipality has appointed a municipal heritage committee, the council shall, before including a property that has been designated under this part in the register under section 3 or removing reference to the property from the register, they must consult their heritage committee. So I think if we pass the resolution, at least receiving the presentation, we will treat this as your consultation. I think that'll be okay. But I don't know, again, if there is any concern down the road, this.
I'd like to move a motion to receive the presentation.
Okay, so we are changing this then.
So just take that out, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so then all right, so we're changing the motion or the resolution here to just receive the report. Okay, one moment. Okay, again, because we're just setting a precedent here, we want to make sure that whether we're doing this by the books is all. Okay, so thank you everyone for your, oh my gosh, I'm tired all of a sudden. Okay, thank you for your patience. A new resolution here. Resolved that HR 2506 Heritage Property Recommendation Report for 7 Patton Street be received and that the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee be consulted. A mover? Has been consulted. Thank you. Has been consulted. Do I have a mover? Councillor DeFlavio. And a seconder? Brian. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate everyone's patience and conversation for that item. And thank you again for our delegates for coming forward today. I really appreciate you coming by and sharing. Okay, give us one moment to sort all of the papers that are happening here, and then we'll move on with the minutes, with the meeting. Okay, everyone, how are we feeling before moving forward? Okay, we're plowing forward. All right, thank you, everyone, again. Okay, so where's my little sheet that has like a nice little list that I like to refer to. That has okay. I just like my list because surprise, surprise, we are back up to the beginning again. With the minutes. So. Everyone, I have a resolution for our minutes of April, so I'll read out. Resolved that the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee minutes of April 8th, 2025 be received. I'll need a mover, Brian. And a seconder, Councillor Kerstanji. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay. Next up is a working group update. Okay, so did everyone get this on their, or is this just me?
No, I just printed you.
Okay. All right, so working group update. Let me just pull up my notes for this. So we have been working on our print map, sharing the built heritage attributes of our downtown area. And we have a draft map to share with the committee tonight. We've also, in the agenda, what was kind of shared with the committee last week, included an attachment with 20 of the properties that we're adding to the maps. It was kind of hidden away, so hopefully you had a chance to look. But the attachment that was shared in the agenda had the 20 properties that we're including on the print map, as well as the small descriptions for those properties. So again, the purpose of the print map is a physical copy of the digital map that we published in February, and this is to promote the built heritage of Grimsby. The print map specifically is highlighting the downtown area. We're working with Shelley of the Charming Place, who's done other work for the town before, to draft up a physical map. So I'd like to share that map with on the screen now, if that's okay, to give you a sense of what it looks like. There are quite a few changes, but I'd like to just give you a preview of what's to come. So the text is so nice and big and readable. But here we have our little downtown map where we have our 20 locations, all heritage designated, and highlighting just the various layers of Grimsby's history. We have loyalists, early settlers history, industrial history, cultural history, commercial history. We've kind of tried to kind of tap into all the different layers, and the print map is kind of assembled like a walking tour, so it kind of traces from Nell's Manor all the way through the downtown, and you end up at the railroad or the rail station, the Great Western Rail Station on Ontario Street. So this map it's in its first draft, but I wanted to give you a sense of what it looks like. We already have some notes of what to include because its purpose is as a tourism feature and to kind of get people exploring our downtown spaces. We're going to ask to add symbols to signify park space at Coronation Park and the trails along Coronation Park, but also access to the Bruce Trail on Gibson Street. We'll also be adding symbols for where people can park, public parking spaces, downtown shopping and eating, as well as cultural spaces, the Nell's Manor Museum, Grimsby Museum, Art Gallery, Public Library, to kind of highlight those areas as well in case people want to take a look and explore those spaces as well. I'm always, if we can highlight the downtown Grimsby side, maybe we can put that on the map as well. So this is the idea right now. This is the draft. Our plan is to have a completed draft ready for the committee to provide comment on for our June meeting. So that will be you looking through the text, looking through the whole pamphlet essentially, and giving us your comments so that we can finalize this. We're hoping to have this printed for the summer months. So we're on track. But again, we have a grant to do this project through the Niagara Community Foundation, and we have money in order to print, quite a few, we're hoping for about 1,000 maps that can we place at all the different town locations, as well as the Welcome Center, the Gateway Niagara. So any comments, questions at this point? Yes, Councillor Christangi, go ahead.
Thank you, through Chair. I think it's fantastic. I love it. I think that they're going to be gone. As soon as people see it, they're going to be gone for sure. It looks great.
Thank you. I appreciate that positive feedback. All right, so I'm getting some nods, so thank you. Again, when we do have that final draft, I would like some feedback of anything that you'd like changed, because again, once it's gone to print, it's gone to print, and it will have the Heritage Committee stamp on it, as well as our partners that we've done to make this, which is exciting. It's kind of cool to be able to work with a lot of, the museum and Nels Manor and all these, different heritage groups across town to kind of bring them together for the project. So it's been a really a good news story for us, which is great. All right, so if there's no other comments or questions, I'll move forward with the resolution. Resolved that the verbal update regarding the working group be received. A mover, Brian. A seconder, Councillor DeFlavio. All in favor? That's great, and that's carried. Thank you. Oh. Okay, moving through the reports. So we'll have Garrett present on 251 Murray Street. Go ahead, Garrett.
Thank you, through you, Chair. The property at 251 Murray Street was added to the Municipal Heritage Register in 2021 because of the building and parcel's potential to have associative and contextual value that contributes to the understanding of the development of Murray Street, the town's agricultural history, and how the town was subdivided by the Queen Elizabeth Way. In 2023, staff were notified that a modern addition to the structure was demolished without the approval of council, and the demolition was retroactively approved by council. In 2024, the property owner submitted a complete register removal request for the property, stating that they intended to demolish the structure. Staff brought forward a recommendation report stating that the property met 3 designation criteria. Staff recommended that the property be designated due to the evaluation, indicating that the resource had the potential to meet the designation threshold and to enable more time for an exhaustive review. The property owner delegated to the committee asking to defer the report to allow more time for an exhaustive evaluation. The property owner then withdrew their intent to demolish. In April of 2025, following an exhaustive assessment of the property, staff have concluded that the resource does contain cultural value and has met 2 out of 9 of the designation criteria. However, based on the data obtained and lack of significant findings, the building does not strongly merit designation under Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Following the thorough and exhaustive review, staff recommend that the property at 251 Murray Street be removed from the Municipal Heritage Register, as the property does not strongly merit designation under Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and that the removal of 251 Murray Street from the Municipal Heritage Register include the following recommendations. That the dwelling at 251 Murray Street be photo documented and copies be provided to the Grimsby Historical Society for their archives. That adaptive reuse be considered for the resource to avoid high quality materials and the available cultural heritage from being removed from the subject lands. That in the event that demolition in the future does occur, efforts be made by the property owners to commemorate the associative history of the property through a plaque. And that in the event that demolition in the future does occur, viable materials be salvaged to the greatest extent possible, including the exterior masonry, to prevent high-quality materials from entering the landfill. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett, for your presentation. Are there any comments or questions from the committee? Yes, Brian, go ahead.
Through you, Chair. Just a couple questions here. So I think I remember this one from about a year ago when they came in. They had a gentleman that spoke. I guess my first question is, back then it seemed like it was very much leaning towards designation. What changed between then and now?
Thank you, through you, the chair. So that was a kind of unique situation. So as you know, there's a legislative time period of 60 days, and the way that it ended up working out, that the next available Heritage Committee meeting, when we received the demo, was in 3 days. So we had 3 days basically to assess the site. And based on our research at the time, it was looking like we were going to be kind having quite a lot of associative and contextual value at the site. And so the idea was that we could start the designation process, which would be giving them a decision. But because it takes 120 days, that would give us the time to confirm before we passed a bylaw. So that was kind of a tricky situation. We only had 3 days, and that's how it was looking at that point when we brought it to you. But the property owner, that's one of the reasons why he said, you know what, let's give it a chance to actually look at it. He wasn't in a rush to demolish the building. So by him removing it actually gave us that opportunity to do the full evaluation. So that's just kind of like, it depends when the demo comes in. We just have to do what we have to do to get something legislated, dealt with, yeah.
Thank you for providing that clarification. Did you have another question? Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Through you, Chair. I think I've read quite a few of these reports. This is the first time I've seen a somewhat. It's usually a yes or a no, and number 5 there. I know you've put some details in the report. Can you maybe just elaborate a bit on that? Because it is a bit of a unique, maybe a first.
Yeah, through the chair, I was really struggling with a yes. I think that's why it came through with the somewhat, because the other 2 were very much yeses, but this one was because we had, I think when we think of a farm parcel, we think, yeah, that has a potential to yield information, but this one was just so, like it was not well recorded at all. Like the available information was so limited that I kind of was torn. Does it have the potential to yield information because it's a farm, because we're built on farms and the agricultural history? So I felt like it was somewhat, but there wasn't enough to say yes. That's kind of where that came from. Yeah, I just couldn't, I think, get over that line. It wasn't a definitive no, but it wasn't a definitive yes. So I think that's where that came from. And I was like, I think that's something we could discuss together. But yeah.
Okay, thank you for providing that a clarification. That was also a question that I had as well, but that was the first time we've seen a somewhat. Any other comments or questions, Councillor DeFlavio?
I find it interesting because from my perspective, other than the location of this house, it seems more of heritage value than the one we just had a long discussion about at 7 Patton Street. I mean, I look at the architectural style, the Italianate style, the relations to the United Empire Loyalists. I'm not in favor of designation of it, but I don't know. I honestly, I feel like the same arguments that were made about the previous property could be made about this one. And it goes back to my, like, you know, again, I know that we're always trying to be objective, but it's hard not to look at this in the context of where it's located and say, you know, does it need to be preserved because it's on this, it's adjacent to the service road and yada, yada, yada. Again, this similar to the 7 Patton Street, I think it's just because it hasn't been torn down yet that it wasn't torn down. And it's, so we could argue either way on this one, I think. And I'm going to say, I'm going to agree that it should not be protected. But if somebody said that it should, I think you could make that argument too. So this house anywhere else, I think we would be arguing that it should be protected in the same way that the 7 Patton Street is. I think that the context and where it's located is the primary reason for arguing in favor of demolition here, because it's not a logical location for a heritage home. So that's the difficulty I have with this is if this was not immediately following the long discussion we just had about 7 Patton Street, I would say yes, it should not be designated. But the argument made in favor of designation on Patton Street, I think the same argument could be made here. And in some ways, somewhat stronger. The house seems to be in better shape. The architectural style it's more unique. You know, there are some pretty good arguments in favor of designation here. So I'm not going to vote in favor of designation because I can understand that not every house can be preserved and not every house is unique, but I just want to make that point. Chair, thank you.
Thank you for voicing that point. And I do agree. I think having these two properties come to the committee at the same time has been an interesting case study in a lot of ways, because I think a lot of the reasons why we were working towards the recommendation to designate 7 Patton, I think, are some of the reasons we can use for designating 251 Murray. So I've struggled with having these two properties kind of side by side for this meeting for that reason. But I would argue that because of Murray Street's location, where it is, to me, almost warrants protection even more, because that's like the last remnant of the space, like, because there's so much, like, there's space around, you kind of get that what used to be a farm and what used to be a rural parcel is now very much developed. So I see that and I say that's more reason to protect it. And to get a reminder of what that landscape used to look like. We know that we protect a lot of the fruit farms that are kind of Main Street East, Main Street West, that go that direction, but we don't have a lot of the fruit farms that are going north-south, and this is one of the few examples that we do. So I see that and I say, oh my gosh, this is one of the last remnants we have of this history. But then reading the report and the reasoning, I also was kind of going back and forth, and then knowing the reasoning as well. Like, this has been a year-long process with the property owners, who honestly likelihood will probably take this further if it does go to designation. So do we have a strong enough case to designate, knowing that it's going to be challenged in the future? I'm not sure if we do. And so I think that's kind of where we have to balance the 906 and Bianca, what you were saying earlier about like how strong are the yeses in the 906. So I just wanted to say that, but I really do want to just commend you on the thought and the care that you put into the report, and then also the recommendations. So I just wanted to say that. I do have a couple other points, but I want to hear from anything else from the committee before I ask anything else. I'm not sure if anyone has anything. Yes, Garrett.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just wanted to speak to a couple of the points that we've heard so far, but the comment about, like, logistically, it doesn't seem like the appropriate location for a designated site. We don't factor that into our assessment, but this was an unusual case, and it did really have us scrutinize, like, the wording in the 906 criteria, specifically, like, does the house contribute to the context of the area? But I'll make a bit of a comparison to like 7 Patton Street. So neither house merited architectural value. This one, 7 Patton, it's more of a vernacular style, where this house can be pinpointed to the Italianate architectural style. The difficulty with this property is that it's lost almost all of the attributes other than the exterior masonry. So like the woodwork, porches, windows and doors have all been removed. Comparing that to 7 Patton, which still has them intact, potentially. But anyways, kind of speaking to like the context of the property, the criteria that we use to measure it states, is it important in defining, maintaining, or supporting the character of an area? But that the area around it has just been kind of completely lost. Like, that is kind of that one piece left. So there isn't really character for it to support. It's kind of sitting alone on its own there. So that's why we weren't comfortable kind of giving it that criteria. But we did give it the criteria that it was physically, functionally, visually, and historically linked to its surroundings. Again, because we do have that brief connection to the agricultural history in the town. But then that kind of, speaking to the associative value, we opened that up a bit more. Not that you can measure the value of it for like the length of time that the building was associated with it, but the house was only associated with the farmland from its time of construction in 1870s to 1889, when it was severed off of the land. So it had a very short time with that history. And compared to like the parcels on Main Street East and West, where they were, multiple 100-acre farms, this was on quite a small parcel as well, which kind of further contributed to why we had difficulty justifying its significance and the contributions it did made to the town. So we do know that it did have an agricultural connection, but we just weren't able to measure the significance of it. And the other associative value that we had tied to it was for John Moore. So we do know that he was of United Loyalist Empire descent, but we weren't able to make a connection from those United Empire Loyalists to this building. It was his grandson's home. And the contributions that John Moore Jr., I believe it was, made to the town were also quite limited. And really, most of the evidence we found were his contributions in politics towards opening Murray Street itself. Possibly to gain access to the home or to like make the property more viable. But beyond that, we were pretty limited in the findings compared to 7 Patton Street, where we had, the builder of the home, quite a complete title chain of who lived there, the contributions they made in town. So thank you.
I was just going to add one thing, because I know you referenced how long it was a farm, and I just want to be clear that it was not necessarily about how long it was a farm, it was how much data was obtained during its ownership. So as far as what we found, we only had 1 year, and that was when it was severed, to determine how big this farm actually was. So there may be a really large farm that didn't run for a long time but had a huge impact on the community. Something like that could meet the legislative criteria. The issue here was, we knew it was an agricultural parcel, but we have no data aside from 1 year, how large this farm actually was, how long it ran. We don't know if it directly benefited the community. So that was the struggle there with that connection. And it's like, speaking to Sarah's comment about the contextual value, we kind of two thoughts to think here. Maybe if we were in the times before 2 criteria were required and we wanted to hang our hat on that contextual significance, you just need that to be a very strong yes. But now you need 2 very strong yeses. And so it's all about the integrity of the designation and the defensibility of that yes. And so that's kind of like some of the impacts we talked about with that legislative change, how it is going to make designation of particular things, like we've talked about worker housing and things like that, where it's maybe not an obviously beautiful building, but has such a strong associative value. And so that was some of the vulnerability we talked about as a committee back then, how requiring 2 has made us protecting different types of history harder. And so I think we absolutely agree there's contextual value on the site. Is it worthy of designation? I think that's where we don't have enough data to back it.
Yes, thank you for providing that further clarification. And I agree, and I think you've laid out a very strong argument why not to. And I appreciate the work that's gone into the research and kind of scrutinizing the sources that are available to come up with the solution. Again, having this property come to us at the same time as 7 Patton opened up a lot of questions for me. And I am curious, going forward with designations, how I feel like this meeting has kind of changed how we go about this. So that's something for us to also keep in mind with further reports that come through, is I think we do need to be a little bit more, add a little bit more scrutiny to the properties that are coming through, making sure that they are super strong yeses. So it's something to keep in mind. My question is for the recommendations that you've put forward. Is there a way to strengthen some of that language to kind of build more clause into it? For example, your first recommendation about working with the town for adaptive reuse, that to me would be a great solution. But are there any teeth in order to kind of make that happen? Same with making a plaque that's erected. What a great way. I mean, the plaque's kind of iffy because there's no real, who's really walking in that area? But is there more teeth that can be added to a recommendation so that the history that is associated with the site, that can be interpreted in a meaningful way?
Through the chair. So I kind of want to touch on the designation one first, if I can, and how the committee looks at designation. So I just want to kind of reflect on the designations we've done. We've done 46 complete ones, or 48 actually complete ones. And we have about 10 that the committee have seen that are in the process of being designated. And all of those ones that we've done, a lot of them are our best of the best. So their criteria is off the charts. There's tons of data to add to these. And so I think that's why we're seeing this contrast right now, because with those ones, there's such obvious yeses. And so, this might have been maybe our second band. So we have our top tier, we have to get these done, then we have our second band, and then the whole intent of the register is to go through this exercise. Is there enough here? Is this something that we want to prioritize? And so I think when we continue with our triaging, you're going to continue to see ones that score so high because we know that there's a lot of data with that house. And we're getting a lot of, like, if we think about the home children and we think about like the recent one about the different wars that were fought across the world and things like that, like these are amazing stories that have been known for the last, since 2008 when it was added, the last 17 years, but we just haven't gotten to them yet. And so I think you're going to continue to see these really powerful, strong stories that are tied to such a strong 906. And it's a contrast to these because they're our second tier. And we're going to get there one day, but it's like, that's, I think, why we're seeing such a stark contrast between the two. And this is a good exercise. This is what we are called to do. So I think this was a good opportunity for the committee to, again, like you said, have that eye and making sure they're really strong. And then for the second part of it, I think, again, that was the argument behind the importance of the register, because that was our tool prior to all of these new legislative tools. This is how we actually ensured adaptive reuse. This is how we ensured integration, because it would stay on the register and we would see these development applications or files come forward, and we would use the protection on the register to manage change in a more flexible way. Where now we're forced to pick either way, go full blown or nothing. And so really we have no mechanisms to enforce any of these, and that's why they're recommendations and something we can encourage the property owner to do, but we really don't have anything to make them do it or give it any teeth. And so that's, I guess, I think tonight's been a reflection on how the legislation has changed over the years and the lack of flexibility, and something we've relayed to the ministry is the importance of that flexibility so that we can do meaningful things that aren't so rigid at the early stages.
Thank you for answering my questions. Yes, Councillor DeFlavio.
Yeah, I think Bianca made a good point about the changes to legislation. That was kind of the argument that we made when the changes occurred. Going forward, I think that when this goes to council, it's important that we provide clarity about what makes one strong enough for protection and the other not, because if they both meet the minimum criteria for designation and one is strong enough for protection but the other one's not, it's not going to build confidence with council, and it's not going to build confidence in the community about the process and taking the process seriously. So I don't know how we do that. I don't know what the answer is. I just think that it's important that is made clear, that, what the distinctions are. And I think that you did a good job in explaining the context and other things that are important as well. I think that needs to be the highlight so that people can understand why it's okay to demolish one and not demolish the other, or demolish both, I don't know, or not demolish either. But it needs to be very clear. Otherwise, there's a risk in both council and the public not respecting the process. That's my fear. So I don't know how we do that. That might be a lot to ask, and I apologize, but I think that is an important next step, because this isn't going to be the last time that we have a situation like this. I wish that we had the register in perpetuity so that we could just, on a case-by-case basis, make that decision rather than having to make decisions on designation, sometimes in fear. So, I've already said too much. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor DeFlavio. And what your point is what I was trying to express for 7 Patton Street is we have 906 in front of us. We have recommendations for 5 criteria, and we were not committed. And to me, that's the sowing that kind of question in the confidence in the system by us not recommending that recommending that report and recommending designation, is we had five criteria right in front of us, and we opted to just receive and not recommend. So that's my fear as well. And so hopefully we can kind of, ensure that the community has, has confidence in the committee and our ability to kind of protect and celebrate and commemorate the history of the town, which is what we're here to do through the Ontario Heritage Act. You had a hand, so I'll pass it over to you, Bianca.
Through the chair, I don't know if I had a hand up, but I just kind of had a thought, and I think it kind of goes to Councillor DeFlavio, where we have like our designated sites and our registered sites, and some of the discussion also came up that like, what happens if there's cultural value, but it doesn't meet the threshold for designation? It's not like we lose that cultural value. And so a lot of municipalities use the register as, again, a way to celebrate that site and be like, yeah, you're not worthy for the full designation, but you're still important and you're still recognized. And so I think that was lost as well with the legislative changes, that it's like, just because we don't know all the history of that site doesn't mean there isn't value there. It's just we haven't uncovered it yet. And so I think looking at the two sites, we have a ton more research, primary sources associated with 7 Patten. We can very clearly say yes and no to that criteria. With 251 Murray, we lack data. And so we aren't able to have primary sources that give teeth to that yes. And so that's the difference there. One has teeth that say yes. If it's fought at the land tribunal, it has defensibility. The other one, there's just not quite enough, in our opinion, to go down that route if it were to be appealed, because there's not enough data.
Yes, thank you for sharing that further clarification. Any other comments or questions regarding 251? My only other question is for recommendation 4, when we ask about like viable materials being salvaged, could we maybe like ask if some of those materials were like reintegrated into the new build? Because like they have some really cool, like that's some, the masonry is, I think, pretty intact. Is that something that we could recommend, or is again, there's no teeth, it doesn't, I don't know.
Through the chair, you could add it in, there's just no teeth. Yeah. It's basically, we're telling them you can take it down or not. Or not take down, we're moving it off the register, or it has to stay on. That's basically what we're saying, yeah.
So are we thinking it's not worth it then?
Put it in there. We can ask.
Okay.
Just put it in.
I think we should put it in. All right, let me just figure that out. Okay, so if there's no other comments, I'm going to read a very long resolution. I know we're all kind of tired and losing steam already, so please don't fall asleep when I read this. Okay, resolved. Resolved that report 2505 municipal register removal request for 251 Murray Street be received, and that the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee recommends the dwelling at 251 Murray Street be removed from the Municipal Heritage Register following exhaustive review and evaluation against the Ontario Regulation 906, and as the dwelling does not strongly merit designation under Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and that the removal of 251 Murray Street from the Municipal Heritage Register be provided with the following recommendations. 1, that adaptive reuse be considered for the resource to avoid high-quality materials and available cultural heritage being removed from subject lands. 2, that the dwelling at 251 Murray Street be photo-documented and copies be provided to the Grimsby Historical Society for their archives, and that in the event that demolition in the future does occur, efforts be made by the property owners to commemorate the associative history of the property through a plaque, and that in the event that demolition in the future does occur, viable materials be salvaged to the greatest extent possible, including the exterior masonry to prevent high-quality materials from entering the landfill, and that if possible, viable materials be reintegrated into the new construction. Do I have a mover? Brian. A seconder? Councillor Cristangi. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we are moving forward with a porch demolition request for 229 Main Street West. Garrett, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair. The property at 229 Main Street West has been listed on the Municipal Heritage Register since 2021. The property was listed on the register due to the age and style of the building and its placement along the historically significant Main Street West corridor. On April 22nd, 2025, the property owners submitted a complete registered demolition request for the property, stating that they intend to demolish a modern porch roof and floor on the east facade of the building. The demolition of the porch will allow for the construction of a new modern addition in the approximate location of the current porch. The subject dwelling was constructed after 1876, as the building and parcel cannot be identified on the 1876 counties of Lincoln and Welland Atlas or the 1877 map of the incorporated village. The style of the home is representative of the Ontario Gothic style, which can be identified by the 1.5-story stature, central dormer, and steep roof lines. This style was popular in Ontario during the 1850s to the 1870s. Examples of this style were constructed after this period as well, due to the popularity of the building style. The subject dwelling was likely constructed after this period, but we weren't able to identify the exact building date for this structure. But during this site visit, staff documented and inspected the porch that is being requested for demolition. Staff found that the porch was built from modern materials that were added onto the house sometime after 1955. The porch has a low-sloped roof, clad in plywood with metal flashings. The porch is supported by a pressure-treated beam and metal posts placed upon a pressure-treated deck. Additionally, the roof structure is showing signs of water damage and rot. In summary, following the assessment of the property, staff have concluded that the porch requested for demolition does not contain architectural, associative, or contextual value. And due to limited findings while reviewing the property, staff recommend that 229 Main Street West remain included on the Municipal Heritage Register and that the demolition of the porch be permitted, subject to the following conditions. That the porch on 229 Main Street West be photo documented and copies be provided to the Grimsby Historical Society for their archives, and that the property remains listed on the Municipal Heritage Register to allow for further review in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett. Any comments or questions from the committee?
I'll just highlight for the committee I'll make it larger on the screen there. It's not the front porch on the dwelling, but it's the smaller one on the east side here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the work, for the report, and I think we'll make sound arguments for its demolition. In my opinion, it looks like it's falling apart. Any other comments before I move over to the resolution? Okay. Resolved that Report 2507 porch demolition request for 229 Main Street West be received, and that the demolition request for the porch at 229 Main Street West be recommended for approval, and that the porch at 229 Main Street West be photo documented and copies be approved to the Grimsby Historical Society for their archives, and that the property remains listed on the Municipal Heritage Register to allow for further review in the future. A mover. Brian. A seconder. Councillor Cristangi. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, thank you very much. And last up for our reports is an information report regarding Bill 5, Unleashing Our Economy Act 2025. We'll give it to Bianca to share that.
Thank you, through you, the chair. So yes, we do have a new bill before us that proposes amendments to the Ontario Heritage Act. The report provided an overview of all the potential changes. I also noted, actually, first, I'll just tell you the status of the bill. The bill is currently in its second reading and hasn't progressed to the third reading. And it will require a royal assent and proclamation by the Lieutenant Governor before it actually is put into the Ontario Heritage Act. And they've given a consultation period until today. So it was a quick turnaround for that. Luckily, we are not archaeologists or archaeology specialists, so I think we would defer to them mostly for their expertise on the matter. But there's a couple items here that I thought I should highlight. So the intent of the bill is to accelerate the provincial permitting for building mines and infrastructure faster. That's the intent of the act. A lot of the changes involved authorization be given to the Lieutenant Governor, and that kind of speaks to some additional oversight on archaeological assessments. It also needs to be focused around transit housing, health, and long-term care. There's also some discussion around potential criteria exemption and areas where exemption will automatically not be provided when there is a highly sensitive Indigenous site. It also includes further prescribed criteria about the inspection of archaeological sites and licensed archaeologists. There is reference to the author being authorized to seize artifacts and bring artifacts back to the public realm or public institutions and return to Indigenous communities. There's also some confirmation on when further assessments are not required due to lack of cultural heritage, value, or interest. I think the one that would affect us potentially, it's already within our existing best practices, but they'll be outlining actual limitation periods on the offenses of the Ontario Heritage Act. So 6 months to the date of the offense would be like the limitation timeline, and then you have 2 years to process it from when the offense first occurred, but that's something we already do. That's consistent with existing legislation, and that would be through bylaw enforcement. And then there's just some more information about like defining terms, and potential court orders and things like that. And so since March 31st, the town has taken over archaeology review. So now it's our requirement to oversee archaeological assessments. And that is all done through the regional plan that was prepared, the archaeological master plan, where all potential sites have been mapped by trained archaeologists. And so we manage development on those sites when planning applications are submitted. So we're fairly new to this role, and we'll just update our processes as the legislation changes. But we do defer to archaeologists and archaeology specialists to kind of dive deep into this bill and see how it actually impacts the field and the enforcement and compliance of archaeology in Ontario. So we'll navigate the changes as they come, but as for blaring changes, there's nothing that's really going to change how we do things as of right now, and then we defer to the specialists for the rest of it. So that's all the updates I have on that.
Thank you very much for interpreting the act for us. Any comments or questions from the committee? So this is just strictly regarding archaeological assessments and sites, and it seems like the intent is more for like resource extraction and mining not in Grimsby.
Through the chair, we do have like a lot of archaeological potential in Grimsby, and we'll see how that changes the legislation. But that is all mitigated through like the archaeological master plan at this point. Like we'll see what happens and what changes. We're still navigating what that looks like. But it looks like the delegation will be provided when it's in the interest of those things. So that's my understanding. As far as the like legislative changes, it's not really affecting Part 4 and Part 5, like designated sites. The only thing is that reference to like new rules on like offenses, like you actually have timelines and stuff when things have to be done, but we were already adhering to those anyway, so it doesn't really affect us that way. But I look to the archaeologist to see how this is actually going to affect us, because I don't know the volume of the impacts.
Okay, thank you. I feel wary of this act. I'm not quite sure how it's going to impact us and the environment, but I thank you for interpreting the heritage side of things for us. I'm also wary of that first section that's saying the lieutenant governor, they can just exempt a property from Part 4, so they can just decide, never mind?
Through the chair, it's not Part 5, Part 4, it's Part 6.
Part 6, okay.
That's archaeology.
Okay.
Yeah, so they can exempt a site from requiring archaeology.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank
Sorry.
you. I think that's just, we've been here for 2.5 hours, because
Yeah.
I didn't flag that earlier.
No, when I first looked at it, I was like, oh no, is it Part 4? But then I was like, oh no, the I and the V are switched.
Yes,
So it's,
okay,
it's
okay.
6.
That's just me being here for a long time, because again, I didn't flag that earlier. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I do have one last resolution then. Resolve that information report 2508 proposed amendments to the Ontario Heritage Act Schedule 7 of the Protect Ontario by Unleashing Our Economy Act 2025 be received. A mover. Councillor DeFlavio, a seconder. Councillor Cristangi. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Fantastic. And I think that that adjourns our meeting for May. So thank you all very much for your time and efforts this evening. Have a great night.